Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, time to take a look at the final episode of the day, which is Who Mourns for Morn. Odo enters Quark's to inform Morn that his cargo of Lavinia beads is starting to spoil the cargo bay and needs to be moved immediately. When Morn doesn't respond, Odo reaches out to touch Morn's shoulder, only to find Morn as a hologram. Quark informs him that Morn has been away from the station for the past 2 weeks. Odo is confused. The Quark explains that Morn is such a regular fixture in his bar that business simply falls off when he's not there. The last time he was away, business dropped 5%. As if to prove his point, as they are talking, Chief Brand and Dr. Bashir enter the bar and greet Morn as they pass by, not noticing it's a hologram. Odo asks why the hologram doesn't talk. The Quark complains about the high cost of an interactive hologram generator, besides which, he prefers to accompany the hologram to the real Morn, who never shuts up. Just then, Lieutenant Commander Dex and Captain Sisko enter and freeze in their tracks when they see Morn at the bar. Finding out it's a hologram, Sisko tells Quark to shut it off. Sisko attacks to inform everyone that Morn died when his ship hit an ion storm. The funerals held at Quark's, according to Lurian traditions, including gifts of food and drink for the deceased so they will have something to sustain them in the afterlife. The funeral is attended by almost everyone in the station, and there are many genuine outpourings of grief. Quark, of course, attempts to capitalize on this, selling oversized Udrian ale by labeling it Morn's favorite, and delivering a eulogy that ends by encouraging everyone to keep Morn's seat warm for eternity by spending their time in the bar. Odo is skeptical, guessing that, when all said and done, the Frankian didn't know anything about Morn and is unaffected by his death. In private, Quark finds that he is deeply grieved. Morn failed to pay his last month's tab before inconsiderately dying. Captain Sisko seals Morn's will and discovers that he left everything to Quark. In accordance with station procedure, Odo explains the contents of the bequest. He only tells Quark that Morn's bank accounts are empty. He just that Morn's money might have been tied up in the inventory for his cargo shipping business, only for Quark to find that his only assets are his most recent cargo, the now spoiled beads. Quark's last hope is that he spent the money furnishing his quarters with expensive items, only to find Morn owned nothing except a large mud bath, Morn's bed, and a painting of a matador. Quark is baffled. Morn was one of his best customers, and always paid his not so insignificant bar tab on time, so he must have had money somewhere. Odo leaves Quark to mope in Morn's quarters. After he leaves, a nude woman appears out of the mud. The woman identifies herself as Morn's ex-wife Laurel, who is going to claim her share of Morn's estate. Quark is amazed when Laurel confides to Morn won 1,000 bricks of gold-pressed platinum in the Giuseppe lottery. He's glad she came by. Quark starts searching for the platinum by emptying the tub of mud. Laurel realizes he doesn't know where it is, and neither does she, but it must be on the station somewhere. She starts to regret that Morn couldn't enjoy the platinum while stroking Quark's lobes, but he knows what she's doing, getting to his good graces so she can share the platinum. Even though the platinum is Quark's, Laurel threatens to tie Quark up in court for years if she doesn't cut her in. Besides, it's a lot of money and she promises to take a vacation with him. He's satisfied for the moment. Over a game of Tongo, Quark tells Dax that he searched the entire station for the platinum and even had Rum use the internal sensors but still come up with nothing. Then comments on how platinum is actually a liquid that's suspended in worthless pieces of gold, and yet somehow is still beautiful. Dax asks if he still intends to share with Laurel. The Quark confirms he's cut her in for 10% to avoid legal troubles. Dax is suspicious, saying he needs to watch his back. Quark understands, but is willing to keep her hanging for now. Later, Quark finds 2 alien brothers, race unknown, Crit and Nask, have invaded his quarters. They claim they are business associates of Morn, and the 1,000 bricks of platinum was actually loaned to him, and they expect Quark to make the repayment. They then threaten Quark if he doesn't pay them, and break the matter of paying over Quark's head when he tries to haggle them for a lower percentage, eventually selling for 50%. After they leave, however, Quark discovers that there was an access chip hidden inside the painting that gives access to a storage locker in the assay office. Quark is really excited and shouts out to Morn, thanking him wherever he is. Bajor's security brings a small container to Small container Odo's security office, but contains only a single brick of latinum. Quark isn't worried, as notices Morn wrote a bank account number on it for the Bank of Bolias. He excuses himself to arrange delivery of Morn's savings. On the way, he encounters Laurel again and steals a brick from Quark. However, Quark remembers the account number and knows the bank only delivered to him. Still on the way, he encounters the brothers, who deliver a thinly veiled thread before letting him go. Just as Quark is about to contact the bank in his quarters, however, a disruptor is held to his head by a human named Hayne. Hayne carefully has Quark leave the terminal to escort him to a holding cell. When Quark asks, he identifies himself as working with Luring Security, and that instead Morn was the crowned prince, and that his riches belonged to the royal family of Luria, who bequeathed it to him when he abdicated. Hayne further claims that Morn promised to return the money when he died. As a result, the will is rendered void, and Quark will be spending the next few years in prison for intercepting government property. When Quark mentions Laurel, though, he pauses to think. Hayne says she'd been trying to blackmail the family for years. Instead of arresting Quark, Hayne would ensure Quark got a sizable reward for helping capture Laurel. These Quark continued calling the bank and telling him to leave the rest to him. Meanwhile, back in the bar, Morn's absence is keenly felt. O'Brien is fixing an electronic relay while sitting in his chair, keeping Morn's chair warm. Bashir comes by as well, and learns that Quark is indisposed. After a quick exchange, O'Brien has to leave, so Bashir takes over sitting in the chair for a while. Later, Quark finds Laurel's quarters to discuss when the Latinum will arrive, but someone tries to pick the lock. Laurel hides while Kid and asks Pat bypass the lock at the red and Quark. Quark's door buckles off, so Kid and asks to hide when Quark answers the door. Hayne enters and Quark attempts to warn him of Quark's guess, but he doesn't catch on while everyone in hiding comes out. As for the Hayne, Laurel, Crit, and Ask were aligned to Quark, and they, along with Morn, had been the ones informed of the infamous Mississippian Mother's Day heist 9 years previously. It turns out that Morn had betrayed them all and left with the entire 1,000 bricks of gold plus latinum they had stolen. Since then, the group was waiting for the statute of limitations to expire, which it just did 2 weeks previously. Then, the group realizes they don't need Quark anymore. At first they said to kill Quark, but he reminds him he's the only one who could take delivery of the latinum. Nask has the bright idea of severing Quark's thumb, the only piece they need, but Haynes steps in and vetoes the idea, so the camera will break into the cargo bay with the severed thumb without attracting suspicion. Since they're going to split it 5 ways anyway, they agree to let Quark take Morn's place. Refusing to leave Quark alone, they'll go to Quark's bar for a drink. After Nask comments on how his Morn was before he said he was back to the door, and takes a chance to ask which of the group actually killed him. No one takes credit, leaving us surprised that Morn genuinely died in an accident. Odo arrives and asks why the bar is closed at that hour. Quark indicates his new partners, and introduces them as friends of Morn, with whom Quark has been commiserating in private. Quickly catching on, Odo asks how much longer they will be commiserating, and Quark says until 16 hours the next day, the time the shipment of latinum will arrive. After accepting the shipment, Quark goes to count the bricks to only find Hayne, Laurel, Crit, and Nask have all drawn weapons on each other. Crit says Hayne is outgunned, as his brother may be slow, but he'll get Hayne in the end. Nask takes offense at being called slow and turns on his brother. A firefight breaks out, so Quark jumps into the large cargo container. Odo's deputies arrive and apprehend the 4 robbers. Laurel, being the only one unhurt, is taken to a holding cell, while the rest are taken to the infirmary. When Odo assures Quark that the 4 will be put in jail for a long time, Quark is sacked to be the sole owner of the bricks. But when he knocks the 2 together, they crumble in his hands. Quark, aghast, says someone has extracted all the latinum from the bricks, leaving only worthless gold. And it's all yours. Odo chuckles gleefully while leaving Quark furious and upset, having gathered so much only to end up with almost nothing. That evening, Quark is fuming behind the bar and attempts to rip Morn's stool from the floor. Odo arrives and says someone's here to see him, and in walks the very live Morn, who takes his usual stool. Quark demands an explanation. Morn starts to open his mouth, but Quark cuts him off, saying he doesn't want to hear it. He's already figured it out. Morn knew this former associates would come after him as soon as the statute of limitations expired, so faked his death and pretended to leave his property to Quark, knowing that Ferengi would do whatever it took to get the Latinum, and succeeded in holding off his four partners until they turned on each other. Morn nods guiltily, confirming Quark's story. Quark angrily says he could have been killed, and demands to know what happened to Latinum. Instead of replying, Mark picks up a small glass and regurgitates a small quantity of liquid latinum, about 100 bricks worth, into it. Amazed, Quark realizes that Morn swallowed the latinum and has been carrying it around in his second stomach all these years, which also explains why his hair fell out. Morn pushes the glass to Quark as a fair reward for his help. Quark is more than satisfied, and, intrigued by this scheming, underhand decided Morn he didn't suspect before, starts to discuss possible joint ventures for the future, such as selling Morn's gold dust, since the Soprano cultures still consider it valuable. Oh, Quark. So anyway, let's take a look at some production notes from this episode. Latinum expressed into glass was a CG effect. The noise the Morn makes when he regurgitates the latinum at the end of the episode took Supervisor Senator Mace Matosian several days of Foley recording and over 6 hours of editing to complete. The painting of the Matador that smashed over Quark's head was purchased by Morn in the 5th season episode In the Cards. John Neves painted 10 duplicates of the original painting. They were then scored so they could rip when they smashed over Quark's head. Now finally, let's take a look at some trivia from this episode. The wardrobe ruined by an attendant in Morn's memorial service at Quark's is the reason Mr. Krasov Ed from the Voyager episode Ex Post Facto. The title of the episode is a pun that plays on the title of the Star Trek original series episode Who Mourns for Adonai. The soundtrack bears a resemblance to Gustav Holst's Mars from the Planets. A latinum brick from this episode was sold off on the It's a Wrap sale and auction on eBay. Kirk Lofton does not appear in this episode. The majority man that Quark has hidden Morn's seat during the funeral to keep it warm is Mark Allen Shepard without his Morn makeup. Interesting. So far, I think this episode is kind of interesting, and well, personally, I'm not a fan of the Morn character. I do see why some people like him, so yeah. So overall, I give Who Mourns for Morn 3 warp cores out of 5. By the way, tune in tomorrow as we take the next episode, Far Beyond the Stars. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.